was the perfect time for the WNBA to also be posting about this. And they said nothing. And it just goes to show that all of us who have been speaking out about this and saying, like, it doesn't seem like you guys are giving Caitlin, the kind of props that she deserves for bringing all these eyeballs and, the Caitlin Clark effect that we talk about, viewership, money, all of those things. All of the people who were shouting this for the entire WNBA season, this is an instance where we are proved correct.
That WNBA sponsors are pulling away from the league in favor of Caitlin Clark are being framed in highly dramatic terms. The idea being circulated is not just headline exaggeration, but what some describe as a growing concern inside Adam's Silver Circle, where brands are allegedly redirecting their investments away from the WNBA and toward Clark individually. This isn't being presented as another highlight or media moment around Caitlin Clark, but rather as a developing issue that could signal a serious challenge for the WNBA.
She also teased Nike seems to be on board. Again, Nike. Christmas time is here. People are buying Christmas gifts right now, Hanukkah presents right now, holiday stuff right now. Caitlin Clark reveals that she's got a PE, a golf shoe PE, on the way. That's big news.
That WNBA sponsors are increasingly shifting their attention away from the league and instead building more marketing around Caitlin Clark. It suggests that if this trend continues, it could create serious tension within the league's leadership because sponsors valuing one player over the entire organization points to a deeper structural issue rather than just a media storyline. It frames the situation as more than a public relations concern, calling it a potential power shift that could impact the WNBA's future if it continues unchecked. The transcript then highlights Caitlin Clark's impact since entering the league, claiming that viewership numbers surged, attendance improved in arenas that were previously underfilled, and broadcast coverage began focusing heavily on her games and highlights. It also emphasizes how her most viral plays attracted massive online attention, sometimes outperforming the visibility of entire teams over season.
You see her at this event. You see the kind of noise that this is making. You see that this is trending on social media. You see that SportsCenter, Bleacher Report, all of these places, every media outlet is covering this, and you don't say anything. That's what we were talking about this whole season. We were correct. The fans that were saying that the WNBA seems to be trying to quiet the noise of Caitlin Clark, not letting her shine to her full ability, and not, in turn, not helping your own players in the league, we were right. And this event proved it because the LPGA did literally everything correct.
That sponsors began analyzing performance data and consistently saw the same pattern. Caitlin Clark sitting at the center of almost every major spike in attention. According to the narration, everything from engagement metrics and search activity to jersey sales and ticket prices suggested that audience interest was heavily driven by her presence. While sponsors originally signed broad, league-wide partnerships and publicly expressed support for the WNBA as a whole, they were simultaneously tracking real-time data. That data, as described, repeatedly pointed to one conclusion. Much of the league's growing audience activity was clustering around Caitlin Clark. As a result, internal discussions reportedly started shifting. Executives began asking the league more targeted questions, such as increasing her exposure on national broadcasts, placing her in primetime slots, and designing marketing campaigns centered specifically on her. The transcript then frames this moment as a turning point, suggesting the league's response to these requests became a critical decision point with major consequences.
They capitalized on the moment. They found a way to put it on television. They allowed people to be there. Caitlin was signing autographs. They put their best golfer in the tour, league, whatever it's called. They put her with Caitlin because they knew that she would get more eyeballs doing it. They propped up all of their golfers in one event. And you would be crazy to think that they're not going to have another event and invite Caitlin to it. They're going to invite Caitlin to as many events as they possibly can.
That instead of protecting Caitlin Clark as a key figure in the league, the WNBA exposed her to overly physical play, frequent hard fouls, and ongoing criticism about her status as an overhyped player. It argues that more attention was spent defending the physicality of games than safeguarding the player it portrays as central to the league's popularity. It then suggests that fans and sponsors took notice of how these situations were perceived online. According to the narration, Each incident involving rough play against Clark sparked social media discussions not about toughness or competitiveness, but about how the league was managing or mishandling its biggest star. The transcript goes on to say that sponsors responded by shifting their strategy. Rather than relying on broad WNBA branding, some began centering Caitlin Clark more directly in their marketing, making her the focal point of endorsements while the league itself became less prominent in the messaging. It describes commercials and campaigns where Clark is highlighted independently of her team or the league, implying that she is being treated as the main draw across sports media appearances. Overall, the passage argues that financial and marketing attention is gradually moving toward Clark as an individual brand rather than the WNBA as a collective product.
I'm not sure I've seen a commercial as well received as this Caitlin Clark State Farm ad in a long time. I actually played it on here before talking about the golf thing, but when you are looking at this commercial and why it was so well received, I think it was the delivery from Caitlin Clark, but then I also think there was a line in there that really hit people hard.
A hypothetical internal scenario in which concerns escalate as sponsors begin restructuring their WNBA partnerships. In this imagined meeting environment, reports allegedly show that a major sponsor is still maintaining some league involvement, but is now prioritizing exclusive access to Caitlin Clark-related content and appearances. It further suggests that another brand is redirecting part of its budget away from general WNBA advertising and toward campaigns centered specifically on Caitlin Clark, distributed across social media, streaming platforms, and live events. Although the league continues to receive financial support on paper, the narration argues that decision-makers would recognize a deeper shift. Sponsorship value is increasingly being associated with Caitlin Clark as an individual brand rather than the WNBA as a collective entity.
And in other Caitlin Clark news, Nike just released a brand new commercial featuring Caitlin Clark and her new Kobe shoe that she released today. And I saw this commercial yesterday on social media. I thought it was so cool. There's a shot when she's in the locker room and she opens her eye and it turns into what looks like a snake eye, but when you zoom in, it's actually the Kobe logo in her eye. And as you know, Kobe's nickname was the Black Mamba. I just felt like across the board, this commercial was a 10 for 10. And a lot of people have been getting on Nike because they don't feel like they have been promoting Caitlin as much as they should. But I will say we have to give credit where credit is due. I feel like in the past month or so, they have been tweeting about Caitlin more. And then obviously with this shoe release, they made this super sick commercial to promote it.
That once sponsors realize they get better returns by investing in Caitlin Clark rather than the league as a whole, the entire structure of value changes. It suggests that at that point, the WNBA itself stops being seen as the main product, and Clark becomes the primary focus for attention and marketing. It describes this as a potential tipping point, where even a single sponsor shifting priorities toward Clark is framed as a warning sign, and multiple sponsors doing so would be interpreted as a lack of confidence in WNBA leadership. The narration then claims this shift would raise internal questions among team owners about whether the league is properly protecting and maximizing its biggest asset, and why major marketing attention is increasingly centered on Clark rather than league-wide initiatives like playoffs or team branding. Finally, it suggests that fans could also react negatively if they believe the league is not fully supporting or valuing the player who drew their attention in the first place, potentially affecting long-term loyalty to the WNBA. A worst-case scenario in which multiple major WNBA sponsors leave the league's general partnership model and instead align directly with Caitlin Clark as an individual brand. It suggests that in this scenario, games without her would see significant drops in ratings, while league-wide business plans, such as expansion efforts and marketing investments, would be negatively affected. It also claims this would create financial pressure across the league, including reduced budgets and frustration among players who expected growing investment in the WNBA. Meanwhile, the narration argues that Caitlin Clark's personal brand would continue to grow independently, expanding into media projects, global appearances, and crossover events, with sponsors consistently following her due to audience demand. The central question raised is whether the WNBA could remain stable without her presence, or whether the league has become too dependent on a single player for its audience and commercial attention. On how Caitlin Clark's rise has turned her into a major marketing force in women's basketball, with brands like Nike, State Farm, Gatorade, and Wilson building high-profile campaigns around her. It argues that her commercials consistently go viral, drive massive engagement, and even boost ticket sales, merchandise demand, and online interest in the WNBA. The narration suggests that while some criticism of brands like Nike existed in women's sports, their recent Caitlin Clark ad is seen as a strong response that highlights her as a central figure in the game. Overall, it frames Clark not just as a player, but as a global marketing centerpiece shaping the future of women's basketball.